Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 19. Maya javane kachanam ajnadoksajam avyayam na lakshyase mudadrisha natho nathadeyaro yatha.
Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized.
Tatha paramam hamsanam muninam amalatmanam bhakti yoga vidantaram katham pashyema hi sriyaha.
You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service unto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly?
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses.
Nama Pankaja Nabhaya Nama Pankaja Maline Nama Pankaja Netraya Namaste Pankajangriye.
My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses.
Yatha Rishikesha Khalena Devaki Kamshena Rudati Chiram Shucharpita Vimochitaham cha Sahatmaja Vibho Tyaye Vanathena Muhurvi Padganat.
O Rishikesha, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers.
Vesan Mahagne Purushada Darshanad Asad Sabaya Vanavasa Krichata Mrade Mradene Kamahata Tadastatro Darunyastatas Chashmahare Birakshita.
My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashwatthama.
Vipada Santuta Shastva Tatra Tatra Jagadguru Bhavad Darshanam Yatsyad Apuna Bhavad Darshanam.
I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths.
Janmaishvarya Shutha Shribhir Ede Manamada Puman Nevarti Abhidutadmu Ve Tvam Akinchana Gocharam.
My lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling.
Namo Kinchana Vithaya Nivrata Gunavrattaye Atmaramaya Shantaya Kevalya Pataye Namaha.
My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists.
Manye tvam kalam mishanam maradi nidanam vibhum samam charantam sarvatra bhutanam yanmita kalahi.
My lord, I consider your lordship to be eternal time, the supreme controller, without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you are equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse.
Nave dakaschid bhagavam chikirshitam tave hamamana shanrinam vidambaman na yasya kaschid dayito stikarichid dvayascha yasmin vishamatirninam.
O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial.
Janma karma cha vishvatman ajasya kartu atmanaha tiriyanisritu yadasu tadatyanta vidambamanam.
Of course, it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering.
Gopi adede tvait kritagasiddhamatavad yate dashasru kalinjan jasamramaksham vaktram niniya bhayabhavanaya samam vimoyati birapiya bibeti.
My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears which washed the mascara from your eyes, and you were afraid. Though fear personified is afraid of you, this sight is bewildering to me.
Kechidahurajam jatum punyashlokasya kirtaye yado priya yasyanavyaye malayasyeva chandanam.
Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills.
Apare vasudevasya devyakyam yachito bhyagat ajastvam asyo shemaya vadaya cha shuradvisam.
Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly, you are unborn, yet you take your birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods.
Bharavataranayanye bhuvo navaivo dado Siddhantya bhuri bharena jatoyi atma bhuvarvita.
Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you have appeared to diminish the trouble.
Bhavesmin klishyamananam avidya kama karma bihi Shravana smarana arnahi karisyaniti kechana.
And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation.
Shrinvanti gayanti granti abhikashna smaranti nandanti tavehi tam janaha taeva pasyanti achirena tavakam bhava pravaho paramam padambujam.
O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for the lovely recitations, Mataji and Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, is Krishna Govinda Prabhuji there, please?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
Thank you. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Ravi Prabhu and Raja Rupali. Mataji, you recited the verses so nicely and so clearly and so precisely as well, with so much devotion. Thank you so much. Sorry, I've been having a little problem on my Zoom. It's just decided to do a little update. So I was just a few minutes late, a minute late rather. I'm just going to share this screen now. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yes,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Okay, great. So the so today's verse is going to be from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 36. So, okay, just before I start, so I'll just say the prayers, pranam prayers as well. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayam Namaskritcham Naram Chaiva Narotanam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye Vastashu Bhadrashu Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatamutam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 36. Shinvanti Gayanti Grananti Abhikshana Shaha Smaranti Nandanti Tavehitam Kichana Taiva Pashyanti Achirena Tavakam Bhava Pravabo Paramam Padam Bhujam. Translation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear and chant and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. Actually, I wanted to ask if anybody from the audience wanted to recite the purport. There's two purports. If somebody could read the first paragraph and somebody could read the second paragraph. Any volunteers? We've got 16 devotees on the group.
I can do it.
Yeah,
First
Krishna
paragraph.
Mataji. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna cannot be seen by our present conditioned vision. In order to see him, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of life, full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Shri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, Kams, Jarasandha, and Shishupal were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets, but they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it is not possible to see him unless we have the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only, beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc. by the people in general. But in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord face to face. The reason that the first item, Shravanam, is very important. If hearing is from the right source, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic qualifications, but because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, first one should select a competent and bona fide speaker and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Krishnanga Mataji. Anybody want to recite the second verse, second paragraph?
Can I do it?
Yeah, but Bhartitanaya Mataji, of course you can, yes.
Thank you. There are different transcendental activities of the Lord, and each and every one of them is competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. In the Bhagavatam, the activities of the Lord begin from his dealings with the Pandavas. There are many other pastimes of the Lord in connection with his dealings with the Asuras and others, and in the 10th canto, the sublime dealings with his conjugal associates, the gopis, as well as with his married wives at Dwarka, are mentioned. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no difference in the transcendental nature of each and every dealing of the Lord. But sometimes people in an unauthorized hearing process take more interest in hearing about his dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer. So a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. One must hear about the Lord from the very beginning, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures, and that will help the hearer attain perfection by progressive development. One should not, therefore, consider that his dealings with the Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the gopis. We must always remember that the Lord is always transcendental to all mundane attainment. Sorry, I can't read that.
Mundane attachment.
Attachment, sorry. In all the above mentioned dealings of the Lord, he is the hero in all circumstances. And hearing about him or about his devotees or combatants is conducive to spiritual life. It is said that the Vedas and the Puranas, etc., are all made to revive our lost relation with him. Hearing of all this scripture is essential.
Thank you so much, Partitana Mataji. So now I'm just going to say the invocation prayers. Do join me. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakada Mayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shivishakamitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Charu Swami Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyachya Disatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining in today's chat session. Once again, today's particular verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8. Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse number 36. Before I start, I kindly ask the blessings of my Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Charu Swami, and the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, our Jagat Guru, founder Acharya of ISKCON, and also the blessings of all the devotees listening, so that I may be able to say something which is actually favorable in our service towards Krishna service. So translation once again is, O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant and repeat your transcendental activities or take pleasure in others doing so certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So this is a very beautiful verse, very sweet verse it is. It's actually explaining how Kunti Devi is saying to Krishna that only those who can actually follow these principles in devotional service, hearing, chanting, repeating Krishna's transcendental qualities and activities, and also encouraging others to speak about the wonderful qualities of the Supreme Lord, can actually see the Supreme Lord's lotus feet, who even the great demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are constantly praying to take shelter and see the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So we are very, very fortunate in this age of Kali. Srila Prabhupada, through his kind mercy, through his service to his spiritual master, has provided a really wonderful facility in providing temples all around the world where deities of the Supreme Lord, Radha and Krishna, are installed. So when we actually go to the temple, you may see a devotee in front of their lordships and actually see the beautiful qualities of the Supreme Lord, his beautiful lotus feet, his beautiful smile, the beautiful face, the way he's actually standing in his three-bent form, the way he's playing this flute, the way Radharani is glancing at Lord Krishna's lotus face. So we can see there is a divine pastimes in seeing the Supreme Lord. But of course, many people, they may see the deity for the first time and may consider it like an idol. They cannot see anything beyond just a model with some clothing on top of this particular model, made out of stone, made out of wood, made out of marble, whatever material it may be, made of brass. But a devotee, in order to see, or anyone in order to see the Supreme Lord in such a way, as Queen Kunti explains in this particular verse, that they have to perform devotional service, and of which the most important one is hearing. And we'll go into that a bit more detail later on. But first of all, when we see the Supreme Personality of the Lord, we try and understand, why is the Lord representing in a form which is made out of stone, made out of wood, made out of marble or brass? But of course, it is not the wood or the stone or the marble that we actually worship. We invoke certain prayers, we invoke certain mantras, we provide a certain yajna and invoke the lordships to come and reside in that particular form, that murti form of the Supreme Lord, so that we can worship that Supreme Lord, Archa Vigraha. We do that performance of worshipping the Supreme Lord in accordance with Narada Muni's Pancha Ratra, rules and regulations of how to take care of the Supreme Lord. And then more recently, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami has produced a wonderful book, Satkripa Tipika, actually explains the formalities of worshipping the Lord, taking care of the Lord, bathing the Lord, dressing the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord, offering offerings to the Lord, in different ways, different pujas that you perform, taking care of the Lord. When you see the lotus feet, that's how you start off with your darshan. And in one of the verses which we were spoken about last week, Queen Kunti, she feels very embarrassed that although she's a noble queen, she feels very guilty at seeing Krishna's lotus feet. First of all, when she sees Krishna, first of all, through his waist upwards to his lotus smile and lotus face. And similarly, Krishna understands Queen Kunti's feelings, so he accepts her because he understands that Queen Kunti is Krishna's auntie as well. But in this case, the importance of the deity is not just an ordinary stone, it's not just an ordinary idol, but he is actually a representative of the Supreme Lord. And he comes and resides in that particular form. And you can see the wonderful pastimes of the Leelas from Chaitanya Charitamrita, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, beautiful stories of pastimes where Krishna actually interacts with his devotees when he's in a deity form. Can anybody give any examples of those particular stories or Leelas? Or Krishna is actually a deity and he actually reciprocates with his devotees when the devotees speak. Any examples, anyone? Okay.
I forgot, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I forgot the name of the devotee, but he spoke to deity of Krishna, he said, walk with me, remember? That was story.
Yeah.
Sakshi Gopal.
That's it. Has everyone seen Sakshi Gopal? That is not very far from Jagannath Puri, probably about 1 hour's ride. It's such a beautiful deity. They won't let you take any pictures of Sakshi Gopal, but this is a beautiful deity. So I believe the deity was originally from Vrindavan, and then Brahmin and an elderly
taken
Brahmin,
it somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
had actually sort of made a vow that the young Brahmin was taking care of the elderly person so nicely, and he said that I will actually allow you to marry my daughter. So when they came back to the village, and he came to see the elderly man, and he said, "Oh, you mentioned that I could have your daughter in hand in marriage." And of course, he was happy to do so. But the son, he was very corrupt, and he said, "No, no, no. How can you arrange this, Father, without consulting us, without consulting, our sister?" But of course, you know, the story goes on that Sakshi Gopal, or rather the elderly person and the younger Brahmin, they made a vow in front of Sakshi Gopal that, this is the vow that the elderly Brahmin has kept. So when the young Brahmana went back to Sakshi Gopal, he explained the situation. Of course, Sakshi Gopal is the Supreme Lord, is situated in the hearts of every living entity. He knows the past and present and future of everyone. Understood the calamity of the distress of the devotee. He didn't want to feel that he was actually considered to be a liar, but at the same time, he wanted to prove that the deity form of the Lord is the Supreme Lord. And the Lord actually reassured him that, please just offer me some little cure every day, and I will come to the place where you've actually are proposed to take the daughter or the girl in marriage for yourself from the elderly family. So of course Sakshi Gopal came, and this is a beautiful story that actually shows that the deity is not just an ordinary stone, but actually walks and talks and reciprocates with the devotees. Is there any other stories that anybody would love to tell? I know we're running short of time because later on we're going to have somebody singing bhajans. Nikal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hi, Krishna Sudhita Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance. His old Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
It's a deity of Radha Ramanji in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
So that deity manifested from a Shila because of desire of Srila Bhatta Goswami.
Yeah.
So he had desire to dress up Krishna, in his meditation. He was just lamenting that he wants to dress up Krishna, see his beautiful lotus face, lotus eyes, and
Yes,
put
that's
nice
it.
garments on him. Then next day, one of his Shila manifested as Radha Ramanji.
Yes,
So
that's
he
a
had
beautiful
12
story.
Shilas. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another one is Tota Gopinath.
Yes.
And
That's
Gadadhar
right.
Pandit was worshipping the deity, and when Gadadhar Pandit became really old, he couldn't reach to the face of the deity, and then he was just saying, I can't serve you, I'm old. And the Tota Gopinath, the deity bent down.
Yeah.
And he's
down.
in a sitting position in Tota Gopinath.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. There's many other stories as well. There's a story of Madhvendra Puri and the story of Gopal as well on Govardhan Hill, where he actually has a desire and he sees the deity of Gopal. There's another story as well with Ramanuja Acharya. This is a wonderful story, and the name of the deity is Kanchapurna. So Ramanuja Acharya at the time, he was saying, my Lord, we're supposed to remember you at the time of death, but what happens at the time of death, we cannot remember you. And the deity Kanchapurna actually replied back, spoke to Ramanuja Acharya and said, do not worry, although you're always in my heart, the devotees are in my heart, and I'm in the hearts of all the devotees. At the time of death, if the devotee does not remember me, I shall remember the devotee personally. So sometimes we have the wonderful stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have the story like the story of Ajamil, when he calls out Krishna's name or Narayan's name, and then the Yamadutas came to take him away, but then who prevented him being taken away was the Vishnu Dutas. We have other stories where the personalities are meditating on the Supreme Lord, and Krishna comes specifically in front of them as well. So the deity form and the name of the Lord is no different at all. So later on, we're actually going to talk a bit more about the particular verse here, continuously hearing and chanting. So what is this famous verse by Prahlad Maharaj, which he actually describes about? hearing and chanting? Anybody knows? You got a clue. So, and one of the tabs at the top. Okay, I'll share it with everybody. Anybody wants to read this particular verse, the first verse and the translation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Ravi, Prabhu, yeah, go ahead.
Shri Prarada Uvacha Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Arjanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyamatma Nivedanam.
Yeah, and the translation?
Prahlad Maharaj said, hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him, in other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Yes, you can see the importance in the particular verse, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, and the first important process of devotional service from the 9 processes of devotional service is hearing. Hearing is the most important aspect in our devotional life, and that's exactly what Queen Kunti is, what Devi is saying, continuously hear and chanting. So when you're actually hearing, just like when you're at school, when you're actually studying in a classroom, different subjects, perhaps geography, maths, English, biology, we don't know anything about these particular subjects, but we're actually hearing, first of all, from the teacher, because we see the teacher as an authorized person who can teach us about these particular subjects. So similarly, in this realm of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we have to actually seek a bona fide spiritual master. And Prabhupada emphasizes this very much, that we should not be following certain sahajiyas who actually recited the Srimad Bhagavatam Katha for fame, for show, for money, for some sort of remuneration. Because those sahajiyas, they're not actually taking it from their heart. They're not taking it from their devotional point of view. They're making it from a business point of view. So hearing is so important. And he actually mentions that, sometimes we should avoid hearing from devotees or who are not devotees itself. It's almost contaminated, similar to like milk touched by the lips of a serpent. It causes a poisonous effect. So you have the holy name of the Lord, and then you have the offenses of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord as well. So we got to try and avoid this at all costs. But how do we know who to approach a bona fide spiritual master? So Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, one should try and approach a bona fide spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him, because the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you, because he has seen the truth. So somebody who is from a disciplic succession, from Krishna himself, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he actually passes the message of the transcendental knowledge, the Rajavidya, from one personality to another personality. So in the Bhagavad Gita, once again, he passed his knowledge on to Suryadev. Suryadev passed it on to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn passed it on to Ikshvaku. This way, the disciplic succession carries on from one generation to another generation. So we've got to be important that when we actually follow, we follow it from the authorities of a disciplic succession. Nowadays, there's so many new groups and new organizations who are springing out everywhere because they feel that, yes, we can just serve Krishna, we can, perform our own sort of facilities where we invite people to pray to Krishna, but their sort of goal isn't so much from a devotional point of view, it's perhaps to make a little bit of money just for their business purposes. Of course, there's many wonderful devotees within ISKCON and also outside of ISKCON who are part of the Sampradaya. Gaudiya Math Sampradaya, who have the same philosophy as what we do, what Srila Prabhupada has given us. So if the knowledge is not distorted in any way, then of course, it's bona fide as well. And the person speaking about the topics of Krishna Lila is also bona fide. But the chanting of the holy name is very important. So this particular verse is from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shiksha Ashtakam. Does anybody know any of the verses from Shiksha Ashtakam? The first verse, perhaps. What is the purpose of chanting the holy name of the Lord? The chanting of the holy name of the Lord is to purify ourselves, to cleanse ourselves from all sort of sinful reactions, to free ourselves from this repeated birth and death. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, it mentions that there's different types of lust that covers the body. Just like smoke is covering a fire, just like the embryo or the womb is covering an embryo, or there's dust on a mirror. There's different degrees of lust that everybody has. And similarly, when we have these sinful reactions, we also want to free ourselves. But sometimes people want to say, well, how do we free ourselves? Just by following the instructions of the great Vaishnava Acharyas. Hearing and chanting of the holy names of the Lord helps us clear all these anarthas within us, clear the sinful reactions, removes the lust, which transforms into love. We can actually see everything in relation to Krishna, everything that we see. Perhaps it could be some object or food or something that may have been a happy occasion, or could be a distressful situation, whether it's happiness or distress, victory or defeat, gain or loss. We see it equally because we see it as, I suppose from Krishna's point of view, we see it as something which Krishna has actually allowed us to pursue this in such a way that we try not to deviate from the spiritual path. So Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, we've actually just translated, Ravi Prabhu translated, and then also we have the verses from Chaitanya Darpana Marjanam, the Shikshashtakam. The first verse, does anybody want to read the first verse? And the translation?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my Dandavat pranams.
Yeah, sure, Sriji, Kishore Mataji.
No, Mamta Mataji.
Oh, sorry, Mamta Mataji, sorry. Carry on, yes.
Can I read that? I'll just sing it.
Yeah, you can read the first two verses, yeah?
Can I sing it also, or is that right?
Yeah, sure, you can do, yeah.
Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam आनन्दाम्बुधिवर्धनं प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृता स्वादनं सर्वात्मा स्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्ण संकीर्तनम् नामकारी बहुधा निज सर्वशक्ति तत्रार्पिता नियमिता स्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवान् ममापि दुर्दैवं ईदृशम् इह जानीनानुरागः. Hare Krishna.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Mamta Mataji. Such a lovely voice you have. Okay, the translation for the first verse is, all glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. So this is the purpose of chanting the holy name. These are the 8 verses given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Cleanses the dust accumulated for years. So life after life after life, we are accruing so much sinful reactions, accruing so much negativity in our life. Who knows? Even right now, we may be committed sinful reactions. It is very difficult to say, but by chanting the holy name of the Lord, which is non-different from the Supreme Personality of the Lord, His name, His form, His qualities, His pastimes, because the Supreme Lord is absolute. everything associated with the Supreme Lord is also absolute. So his name is absolute. His pastime is absolute. His Leela, it's even the prasadam that we take, that we offer to the Supreme Lord in devotional service, helps us cleanse our sinful reactions. So when we chant in the holy name of the Lord, we have to chant attentively as well. We have to chant with devotion. At the beginning, it may be a little difficult, but just concentrating on the lotus feet of the Lord allows us to practice, just continuously practicing and practicing, we become a bit more perfect in our chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Our mind is always constantly drifting away. The mind is wandering from here to there. But as Lord Krishna says, one who's controlled the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain his greatest enemy. So chanting is a form of meditation. By chanting, remembering the Lord, remembering his pastimes, remembering his devotees as well, allows us to fix ourselves onto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So this Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. Every person, every living entity in this material world, we can all see they go through the repeated cycle of life after death, life after death, life after death. Old age, birth, death, disease. It's constantly surrounded by the three elements of how would you call it? The sufferings, the three different types of suffering, the Adhyatmika, the Bhautika, the Devika. So how do we free ourselves from all this constant suffering? By chanting in the holy name of the Lord. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. So sometimes when people actually chant in the holy name of the Lord, they may not have that taste straight away because, of course, that level of hearing is the most important thing. Once you start hearing from a pure devotee, then that actually allows it to be penetrated within the heart. Within the heart, what happens? Every single cell within your body becomes transcendental. You become blissful. You become in a state of ecstatic enjoyment from a spiritual perspective, from an internal point of view as well. So the second verse, the holy name is so important, as I mentioned earlier on, that the holy name is not different from the Supreme Lord, his name, form, and qualities and pastimes. And you can see from this particular verse how important the holy name of the Lord is. Whether you're going through happy times or difficult times, just calling out Krishna's name. So this is what it actually says in the translation for the second verse. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living beings. Thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. Can you imagine that? All the transcendental energies of the Supreme Lord is invested in the holy names of Krishna. Now, you can never actually say how much energy does the Supreme Lord have. Can you actually measure the light of the sun? Can you measure the heat of the sun? Can you imagine how big the sun is? It's almost impossible because our mind is very limited. So can you imagine the Supreme Personality of Godhead who has created every living entity, every universes, every sun within the universe itself, and there's millions and millions of universes. So his energy, even when it mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, know that of all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations, it's but a spark of my splendor, just but a spark of his splendor, this mighty creation, this beautiful creation. So this unlimited energy of the Supreme Lord is invested in the name of Krishna. So what do we chant? We chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. We have to chant it with love, with devotion. One should chant it in the way that we want something in return. I know sometimes times are difficult, distressful situations, happy situations, financial situations, health situations, somebody passing away. We prayed for everybody. Krishna understands everything within your heart. But if you just pour out your love for Krishna, cry out for Krishna, like when you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, sometimes it's very difficult to understand. Why is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always crying and crying and crying? Why is it that we can't cry at all? But of course, he actually explains, that his, when will that time come when his hairs stand on end, when his tears are flowing like a flowing river, It is very difficult, but sometimes when you actually have that connection to the Supreme Lord and his devotees, by performing the 9 processes of devotional service, as Prahlad Maharaj mentioned, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam, you can actually progress slowly to serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that Namaruchi, that taste of the Supreme Lord, comes manifested within your heart. So, just finishing off the translation of the second verse. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting his names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction with them. So this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying this, even though he is the incarnation of the holy name, but yet he actually says that he has no attraction for them. But we have to have that faith in the Supreme Lord, have complete faith in the actual processes of devotional service, complete faith in the scriptures of the Supreme Lord, have complete faith in the devotees of the Supreme Lord. Slowly, step by step, we can actually taste that beautiful love of Krishna by chanting his holy name of the Lord. Now, the important thing is, but when you do chant the holy name of the Lord, there's the third verse, which is so important. Now, does anybody want to recite the third verse? Mamta Mataji, would you like to sing the third verse again?
Okay, Prabhuji. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi shahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada harihi na dhanam na janam na sundaram kavitam va jagadish kamaye mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir ahituki tvai.
Thank you so much. So that translation for verse number 3 from Shikshastakam by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, should be ready to offer all respects to others. Such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So there's 3 aspects that we should all follow in this particular verse. The first one, we have to be in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. So you see the grass, you see the plants and the ground, everybody treading on it, but does it ever retaliate at all? We walk on the grass, it's just trampled on by whenever we walk, by running on it all the time, when we're playing games, when we're walking the path. So we have to be humble like a blade of grass. We got to be more tolerant than a tree. When you look at a tree, it's just rooted in one position all the time. Despite the different elements that's constantly devouring it in some way or form or shape. It could be extreme heat, it could be extreme cold weather, the winter seasons. It could be a time when there could be a drought, there's absolutely no water. So it endures so many difficulties. It's even cut to take the fruits off the tree, or even the branches taken off for firewood, but it does not sort of retaliate, it does not complain. Of course, it suffers just like a living entity. Every living entity suffers in some form or shape. We have to be tolerant like a tree. So no matter how people are knocking you down, cutting you away, we just have to completely surrender and depend on the Supreme Lord. Please, my dear Lord, protect me. Please protect me. Please protect me. Now, the third one is a hard one because we always want some sort of recognition as well. We can be sort of humble, we can be tolerant, but sometimes in our life, we always want some sort of appreciation. We want somebody to sort of pat our back, just like a little child. he's playing something, he's made some toys, he's made a model. He wants his parents to have a look and say, look what I've done. And he wants a little pat. It's an innocent sort of pat as well. But at the same time, as devotees, we should try and avoid any sense of false prestige. But it's not to stop you from appreciating devotees. That's so important. We have to appreciate devotees, no matter how little or big they do. You know, when we see recently in the book marathon, so many young children were going out on books, despite the weather, despite, you know, a lot of other sort of things that they could do at home, perhaps play games, read books or something, but they were happy to go out in the books in the cold weather and speak to adults who are like 5 times older than them. But they were happy, they were very brave, because why? They were just completely depending on the Supreme Lord. It wasn't because they wanted some money or some reward or some, you know, some pocket money in exchange. No, because they had this taste, this desire to serve Krishna by giving the wonderful glories of the Supreme Lord to others. And that is what Srila Prabhupada was saying, that when we actually take this Krishna consciousness, we serve, we appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whatever we've learned, even if it's the smallest thing, the chanting of the holy name, the important thing is to pass that knowledge, that experience, that feeling, that love, that appreciation to other people as well, who may not as they've got it, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And utility is the principle. So those are the 4 things. Preaching is the essence, books are the basis, purity is the force, and utility is the principle. Utility by coming together in different ways, just like we use in the facility here through the means of the computer, through the internet, we're able to preach from here where I'm sitting in Bushi to all the different people, devotees who participated from different areas. But of course, more importantly, is to come into the temple where Krishna can actually see you personally. I know sometimes it's not always easy because of the weather, because of commitments of other activities, family, or even transportation. But of course, taking darshan every day in the morning is so important. So I'm just going to end there. Just make sure I've covered everything. Just one particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita I just wanted to share with everyone. From the Chatur Shloka, as Queen Kunti was saying, O Krishna, who continuously hears, chants, and repeats your transcendental activities. So transcendental activities, the Supreme Lord has so many wonderful pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Mahabharata, and they're all beautiful pastimes. And earlier on he mentioned about the pastimes. He mentions like people like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha, Shishupal. Although they may be qualified personalities, but at the same time, they didn't have any qualities to see the Supreme Lord. But yet the pastimes are so wonderful pastimes that when we read these pastimes, the purport, at the end of each purport, Krishna mentions that, or Srila Prabhupada mentions, anybody who's actually read this particular purport or this pastimes of Krishna killing this particular demon, or the Krishna and the gopis, or Krishna, the Kurukshetra, the war, the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, when they actually read it and appreciate it and have some love and devotion of this particular pastimes of the Supreme Lord, are eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. So there's just not ordinary pastimes, they're actually important pastimes that we all have to follow. Yeah, and later on it actually does mention about the importance about some of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and here it mentions about the gopis as well. But here, because of time, we will go into that later on in another class itself. But now we have Nikhil Prabhu, Everybody knows Nikhil Prabhu, wonderful devotee. He recites so much wonderful poetries and pastimes of the Supreme Lord and Prabhupada. So he's going to be singing a particular song for us. Oh, sorry, just before I do pass out to Nikhil, the verse I wanted to share with you was this particular verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 9. Machita margata prana udayanta parashparam katayantascha mam nityam tushanti charamanti cham. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. They derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is exactly what Kunkuti was saying, that the devotees are constantly reciting or conversing with one another, the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord, the activities of the Supreme Lord, singing and glorifying the Supreme Lord. So now, Mamta Mataji is going to be reciting the translation for a song which Nikhil Prabhu is going to be singing, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite by Rupa Goswami. So, Mamta Mataji, are you there?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So this song named Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite, author is Rupa Goswami, and from the book named Stavamala. O Radha, O beloved of Madhava, O you who are worshipped by all the young girls of Gokula, all glories unto you, all glories unto you. You who dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodara's love and attachment for you, O Queen of Vrindavana, which is the pleasure grove of Lord Hari, O new moon that has arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu, O friend of Lalita, O you who make Vishakha loyal to you due to your wonderful qualities of friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna. O you who are filled with compassion, O you whose divine characteristics are described by the great sages Sanaka and Sanatana, O Radha, please be merciful to me. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, shall I go ahead?
Yeah, sure, Nikhil Prabhu, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. And yeah, just before I start, thank you to Sriji Kishori Mataji for giving me the opportunity to sing this bhajan, one of my all-time favorite bhajans. And yeah, also please request all the devotees to give me a blessing so that I can nicely glorify our most beloved Srimati Radharani. My internet connection has been cutting off a little bit earlier, so hopefully it's okay during the bhajan. So yeah. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite, Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite, Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite, Damodara Rati Vardhana Veshe, Damodara Rati Vardhana Veshe, Hari Nishkuta Vrinda Vipineshe, Hari Nishkuta Vrinda Vipineshe, Radhe Jaya Madhava Daite, Radhe Madhava Daite, Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite, Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Vrishabhanudadhi Navashashileke Vrishabhanudadhi Navashashileke Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhavadaite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhavadaite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Karunam Kurumai Karuna Bharite Karunam Kurumai Karuna Bharite Sanaka Sanatana Vanita Charite Sanaka Sanatana Vanita Charite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhavadaite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhavadaite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhavadaite Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radhe Shyam Radhe Shyam Jaya Radhe Shyam Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Vrindavan Dham Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora, Hari Bol. Srimati Radharani ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gora Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikhil Prabhu. That was so lovely recited a song, Radhe Jaya Madhavadaita. It's a beautiful song, it is. And we love listening to that song as well, especially during the time when they do the, as well as that one, and Jai Radhe, Jai Krishna, Jai Vrindavana, when during the Julan Yatra. There was one particular verse I wanted to share. I forgot to mention it earlier on. It's actually from another class I gave a few weeks ago at Bhaktivedanta Manor. If I could just share it with you, it's from Mahabharat, Udyoga Parva 71.4. So basically, this is actually understanding what the meaning of Krishna is. So normally when we ask people, I mean, not people, when we hear what Krishna means, most of us see the translation as all attractive, or we read it from Srila Prabhupada's books. But this is quite interesting from this particular verse from Mahabharat, Udyoga Parva. Shirbu Vachaka Shabdu Nascha Nivriti Vachakaha Tayo Aikyam Param Brahma Krishna iti abhityate. The word Krish is the attractive feature of the Lord's existence, and na means spiritual pleasure. When the verb Krish is added to the affix na, it becomes Krishna, which indicates the absolute truth. So when we're chanting the holy name of the Lord, we're always reciting the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all attractive and full of absolute truth. So thank you very much. I don't know if there was any questions. I'm just going to check in the chat groups. No, thank you. Everybody's appreciation for all the devotees who sang and recited the verses from the class. Appreciate that so much. So thank you very much, and please forgive me for any offenses or mistakes that I may have made. For my respects to all of you. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare
Thank you
Krishna,
very much,
everyone.
Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. It was so lovely. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for nice.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful
Hare
singing.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.